The Ministry of External Affairs on Wednesday slammed the Nepal government's approval of a new Nepalese map that shows territories contested with India as a part of Nepal. Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli on Wednesday asserted that Lipulekh, Kalapani and Limpiadhura belong to Nepal and vowed to reclaim them from India through political and diplomatic efforts as his cabinet endorsed a new political map showing the three areas as Nepalese territory. India called the move a unilateral act which is not based on historical facts and evidence. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the India-Nepal map row. Joining me on the program today are Rakesh Sood, former ambassador, Harshvi Pant, Head Strategic Studies Observer Research Foundation, and Major General Dhruv C. Katoch, retired Director, India Foundation. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador, let me begin the program with you. Let's first analyze the latest flashpoint between India and Nepal.
Well, first of all, it is the issue has been there for a number of years. We've been talking about it since the 1990s at least. And because the boundary between India and Nepal was the boundary that we inherited in 1947 which was the boundary between British India and Nepal that had been fixed by the Treaty of Sugauli. And that basically said River Kali River constitutes the boundary, and east of Kali is Nepalese territory. So essentially the dispute arises as to which is the point of Kali River. And I think what has happened is that over a period of time there have been two divergent interpretations. One, whether Kali comes from Kalapani, which is through if we go up to Garbeang, you will find in a map, if your audience could see the map, you would find that from Garbeang along the Kailash Mansarovar road, along the boundary between India and Nepal, there is a point that goes to the east towards Kalapani. And that is, the British took that as the origin of Kali River. Nepal, even at that time, had said that the origin is actually at Limpiadhura. Limpiadhura goes to the west from Garbeang village. And we've been talking about this for the last, we had a joint technical committee of the boundary that resolved about 90% of the boundary between India and Nepal. But this was one small part that required additional work. That it was decided at the level of the Prime Ministers way back in 2000 that this would be addressed by the foreign secretaries. It has not happened. And so that's where the origin of the problem lies. Nepal took it up even in 2015 when Prime Minister Modi had gone to China. And in our joint statement with China, at that time we talked of Lipulekh Pass as one of the areas for boundary trade. Nepal had, this was in 2015, I think it was the month of May. Nepal then protested. It sent us and China both a note saying that, look, this is something which is subject to discussion between India and Nepal, and so therefore this needs to be resolved. So it's not as if this is the first time that the subject has come. More recently, it had come up in November of last year, when after the reorganization of the state of Jammu and Kashmir into union territories, we issued revised maps. And at that stage, again, Nepal had taken it up with us, saying that, look, we need to have talks at the foreign secretary level because your maps show the inclusion of Kalapani. And somehow or the other, we've not had these talks. And then the other thing is that we've been building this road. Now, this road has not been built overnight. This road project was started in 2008, in fact, when I was posted in Nepal. It has taken us nearly 12 years to build this road. And throughout this period, the government of Nepal has been fully aware of the fact that the road is being built. The other thing is that after all, we have an open border and free movement of people across the border between India and Nepal, which is a very rare thing. So people don't really care too much about the actual border because they know they can move across. However, for security reasons, it is quite necessary that we know where the boundary is, we know where the border is. And from that point of view, Lipulekh Pass has been under the government of India's control since the 1950s. And even China sees it as that, because the first time in the India-China border trade agreement that was done in 1953, we find a mention of Lipulekh Pass between India and China's talks. So in a sense, it is seen that this part belongs to or comes under Indian, belongs to Indian territory. However, there has always been this discussion between Nepal and India, which unfortunately has not been satisfactorily resolved and has now come into this rather messy situation with Nepal issuing new maps. The incidentally, the previous Nepal maps before the new ones, while they included the 62 square kilometers of Kalapani, they did not include the 335 square kilometers going westwards towards Limpiadhura. That is the first time that you actually have a Nepali map including that territory. So there are two separate issues, and I think Nepal has upped the ante in a sense.
Okay, so talking about upping the ante, I'm going to come to the strategic aspect of all these three areas in just a bit. General, I'd like to take that up with you. But talking about upping the ante, Professor, what has caused this really? Why has Nepal upped the ante at this juncture?
Well, I think it's quite extraordinary if you see some of the things that the Nepalese leadership at this point seem to be doing. Not only ratcheting up this issue to a level where perhaps it does not belong if you look at the kind of relationship that India and Nepal share, but also in terms of some of the diplomatic niceties that need to be followed. I mean, if you look at the statement that has just come out, that has recently come out from Prime Minister himself, talking of India virus being stronger than Chinese virus, etc. I mean, it looks quite, in simple words, it does not behove a prime minister to speak like that, especially when you know that this is a